Well, Steve Herman is the White House bureau chief for the international media organization Voice of America. Thanks for being with us.
Sure.
So, what do you think Donald Trump is trying to do with his speech there?
Well, he is trying to appeal to his supporters and independent voters that he desperately needs for re-election in November, that there is this threat from the far left, anarchists, as he calls them, socialists, and others who want a revisionist view of American history, literally tearing down these statues of people that have long been considered heroes in this country, and doesn't want to see this discussion take place about a more balanced view of American history.
Well, on that slightly rebalancing of view of American history, just stay there, Steve. I want us all to just listen to these, because the BBC went out and spoke to 3 young African Americans who are among protesters out on the streets calling for an end to racism today, and actually calling for Juneteenth, which celebrates the official end of slavery in America, to be a more appropriate holiday for Black Americans to celebrate. Let's take a listen.
The 4th of July isn't a day for me. It's not a day for people who look like me. As a new nation, even as we were celebrating our independence, we were still widely practicing slavery. So for Black Americans, that story of independence is historically inaccurate.
As you grow older and older, you start to realize that all the men in these wonderful pictures who were the founders of this country, none of them look like you, and even worse, some of them actually owned Black people.
We have to deal with this identity crisis. A lot of people are trying to figure out, what does it mean to be a Black American? For some Black Americans, celebrating this holiday means that they've made it into citizenship. They fought 400 years to celebrate this holiday.
For a lot of Black Americans, there's been this big push to reinvigorate celebrating Juneteenth, which happens on June 19th. I think now, with everything that's happening in our cultural and political climate, that a lot of Black Americans specifically are turning to that holiday instead of the 4th of July.
So, Steve, it's interesting, isn't it? I mean, I should say, for people who don't know, the 4th of July obviously is independence for the United States from the UK. And no one, I don't think, is arguing that that shouldn't be remembered and remarked upon. But this year, there is such a wider conversation going on about American history.
Sure, and Juneteenth is also getting the support of senators in the president's own party. So there is some likelihood that that could become the next new official federal holiday in the United States. But the question that the Republicans are asking, and the president has put front and center, is on this approach to reviewing history and tearing down statues, is where does it stop? George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, early presidents of the United States, heroes of the country's founding, they were slave owners. So should all images of them be removed from public? And that is a bridge too far, and maybe even for mainstream Democrats as well. So that, at least, is one point that the president is hammering on that may find a wider audience beyond his base.
And do you think that is the calculation then? Because his speech yesterday at Mount Rushmore was very similar, amplifying this kind of culture war and a fight back against, in his words, the hard left. Is he setting up and teeing up this fight deliberately to try and, not only appeal to his base, but actually appeal to more moderate voters?
Well, there's no doubt about that's what he's attempting to do. But what we're hearing from some Republican lawmakers, they're very worried about this approach, that, yes, this resonates with the core, but painting everybody who doesn't fully support the president's policies across the board as anarchists, and that basically taking approach to everybody who's been on the streets in past weeks in the United States are elements that are dangerous because, painting the Black Lives Matter movement in one sweeping hand is a bunch of Marxists. There's a lot of empathy for what these people on the streets are demonstrating for against the police brutality, and for the president to take such a stark view could backfire.
Interesting, fascinating stuff. Just while I've got you, Steve, just want one quick question, if that's all right, on coronavirus, because so many of these celebrations that we'd normally see people out on the streets on the 4th of July clearly not happening.
Certainly, the mall where these fireworks will be happening shortly in Washington, D.C., and where we just had a fantastic military flyover, sparsely populated, but the scene on the South Lawn at the White House and what we saw yesterday at Mount Rushmore were many people not practicing social distancing, most of them not wearing masks. This administration, we're hearing, is going to possibly adopt an approach that we just have to live with this virus now, and this at a time when we're seeing the number of cases going up, hospitalizations increasing, but what the administration is pointing to is that the death rate is going down, and everyone is hoping that that holds.
Yeah, absolutely right. Okay, great to have you on the program, Steve. Thanks very much. That's Steve Herman.
Anytime.